The Pakistani tank rumbled forward, its arrogance palpable. It was a steel beast, an embodiment of Islamabad's might. Across the dusty no-man's land, a young Afghan soldier watched. His name was Farid, and he was no stranger to the sting of humiliation inflicted by his neighbor. In his hand, he clutched a simple bomb, a crude but potent symbol of defiance. As the tank drew closer, Farid's heart pounded. He knew the risks, the potential consequences, but fear was a luxury he could ill afford. With a surge of adrenaline, Farid hurled the bomb. It arced through the air, a tiny projectile against the behemoth. The explosion was deafening, a fiery eruption that consumed the tank. The ground trembled in a seemingly endless war of attrition, but he knew this was merely a spark in a tinderbox of tensions. The Pakistani retaliation would be swift and brutal. He had challenged their authority, their dominance, and they would not forgive easily. Farid melted back into the rugged landscape, his heart still racing. The image of the burning tank, a twisted monument to Afghan resilience, seared itself into his memory. He had made his stand, a lone soldier against an empire. But the war, he knew, was far from over. This was just the beginning. The Pakistani soldiers, enraged by the loss of their comrades, unleashed a torrent of fire. Machine guns roared, their staccato bursts echoing across the desolate landscape. Mortar shells rained down, exploding with thunderous booms that shook the earth. Revenge, swift and merciless, was the order of the day. The Afghan soldiers, outnumbered and outgunned, returned fire with whatever weapons they could muster. They fought with the ferocity of men defending their homeland, their pride wounded, their anger burning. But this clash was more than just a border skirmish. It was a symptom of a deeper malaise, a toxic cocktail of mistrust, betrayal, and historical grievances. The relationship between Pakistan and Afghanistan had long been fraught, a tangled web of covert operations, proxy wars, and shifting alliances. Pakistan, haunted by its own internal demons, had sought to control its neighbor, viewing Afghanistan as its strategic backyard. The Taliban's return to power in Kabul had only exacerbated these tensions. Pakistan, which had once nurtured the Taliban as a bulwark against Indian influence, now found itself grappling with a more assertive and independent regime. The Taliban, eager to shed their image as Pakistani puppets, were determined to chart their own course, even if it meant antagonizing their former patrons. The border regions, porous and lawless, had become a breeding ground for militancy. The Pakistani Taliban, a close ally of the Afghan Taliban, had stepped up attacks within Pakistan, targeting security forces and civilians alike. Islamabad accused Kabul of harboring these militants, of providing them with safe havens and logistical support. The Afghan Taliban denied these charges, but the damage was done. Trust had evaporated, replaced by suspicion and animosity. The roots of this animosity ran deep, stretching back decades. Pakistan, carved out of British India in 1947, had always viewed Afghanistan with a mix of apprehension and ambition. Afghanistan, fiercely independent and wary of its larger neighbor, had resisted Pakistani attempts at dominance. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 had drawn both countries closer, united by their opposition to the communist regime in Kabul. Pakistan became a conduit for American weapons and funds, channeling them to the Afghan Mujahideen fighting the Soviets. But the end of the Cold War brought new challenges. The Soviet withdrawal from Afghanistan in 1989 left behind a power vacuum, which was quickly filled by warring factions. Pakistan, eager to maintain its influence, backed the Taliban, a nascent Islamist movement that promised to bring order to the chaos. The Taliban, with Pakistan's support, captured Kabul in 1996 and imposed a brutal regime. The 9/11 attacks on the United States changed the geopolitical landscape once again. The US, seeking to punish Al-Qaeda and its leader Osama bin Laden, who were sheltering in Afghanistan, invaded the country and toppled the Taliban regime. Pakistan, under pressure from Washington, abandoned its former allies and joined the US-led war on terror, but old habits die hard. Pakistan continued to provide covert support to the Afghan Taliban, viewing them as a useful hedge against Indian influence in Afghanistan. The US withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021 marked a turning point. The Taliban, emboldened by the victory over superpower, were no longer content to be puppets in Pakistan's game. They were determined to assert their independence, to forge their own destiny. Pakistan, caught off guard by the Taliban's resurgence, found itself in a quandary. The tank incident was a stark reminder of the fragility of the situation. The flames of that explosion illuminated not just the wreckage of Pakistani military hardware, but also the shattered remnants of a once hopeful relationship. The incident sent shockwaves through the region, raising fears of a wider conflict. The international community, already grappling with multiple crises, watched with growing concern. The Afghan people, caught in the crossfire of this geopolitical tug-of-war, yearned for peace. They had endured decades of war and instability, their lives shattered by violence and displacement. They deserved a future free from fear, a future where their children could grow up in peace and prosperity. But peace seemed like a distant dream. The path ahead was fraught with peril, the legacy of mistrust and betrayal casting a long shadow. The tank incident, a small spark in a tinderbox of tensions, had the potential to ignite a conflagration. The region held its breath, bracing for the next chapter in this tragic saga.